When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the scent of dried herbs. They clung to the quilt, faint yet familiar, like home. For a long while I lay still, my gaze fixed on the old wooden beams above me, half expecting the ceiling to blur into the sterile white hospital lights of my last memory. But it didn't. The air wasn't thick with the smell of antiseptic. Instead, it carried the faint aroma of wood smoke drifting in from the kitchen stove. I blinked rapidly, my heartbeat stumbling into an uneven rhythm. The second thing I noticed was the warmth pressed against my side. I turned my head. My entire world stopped. Mom. Her face was inches from mine, slack in sleep. Strands of gray threaded through her thick black hair, tied messily at the nape of her neck. Faint lines bracketed her mouth, born of years of laughter and years of sighing. Her breathing was even, her chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm I had once taken for granted. My mother, Evelyn Dawson, was alive. Alive. I slapped my palm against my mouth to stifle the sob that tried to claw its way out. I had buried her once. I had stood by her coffin, my fingers icy against the wood, listening to neighbors murmur condolences while my heart withered inside my chest. But here she was. Alive, breathing, leaning gently against me. I've been reborn. It wasn't possible, yet the warmth of her hand resting limply on my arm told me otherwise. I had returned to the year I was 19, the very year when everything had begun to unravel. I wanted to throw my arms around her, but before I could, her lashes fluttered and she stirred. Her eyes, still clouded with sleep, blinked open and settled on me. The first thing she did was frown. "Clara," she muttered, her voice hoarse with drowsiness but tinged with displeasure, "are you really planning to register your marriage with Nathaniel tomorrow? I just don't understand you and your father. The both of you think so highly of that boy. But her brows pinched together. I don't like him. Every time he comes around I get the feeling there's something between him and that Valerie girl." Her tone was sharp, laced with that old, familiar disapproval I had heard so many times before. I froze, the breath lodging painfully in my throat. The déjà vu was staggering. She had said those exact words to me before in my last life. Over and over she had tried to steer me away from Nathaniel Cross, my so-called fiancé. And what had I done? I had laughed. I had argued. I had rolled my eyes and stormed away, convinced she simply didn't understand him. Convinced she was too prejudiced, too old-fashioned, too protective. Even when she grew sick, her body wasting away in a hospital bed, I visited her less than I should have. "Nate needs me at the company," I had said. "I'll go tomorrow." But tomorrow had come too late. On her last night she had been barely able to speak. She'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "Clara, silly girl. Nathaniel may be smart and willing to work hard, but he's not a good man." I had been too tired to argue. I had nodded faintly and said, "I know, Mom." Her lips had curved into a weary smile and she had sighed, "Now I can rest easy." Then she was gone. And later, the doctor had called me back into his office with a grave expression. "Your mother's body shows signs of long-term poisoning," he had said. "At least 5 years. 5 years. The same 5 years since I had married Nate." The memory slammed into me like a thunderclap. My breath hitched. Tears blurred my vision until my mother's face wavered before me. He was still alive. This time she was still alive. And this time I would not make the same mistake. "Clara." Her frown deepened as she studied me. "What's wrong with you this morning? Don't tell me you're so blinded by happiness you can't even think straight." She shifted, reaching for my hand. Her grip was firm, grounding. "You're my only daughter. Don't let a man make a fool out of you." Her voice cracked on the last word and I felt it like a knife in my chest. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. My throat clenched tight and when I spoke my voice trembled. "Mom." She blinked, startled by the sudden tears. "What on earth?" "I won't marry him," I blurted. My fingers tightened around hers as though I could pour all of my conviction into her palm. "I won't marry Nate. I'll listen to you this time. I promise." Her eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. For a heartbeat she just stared at me, stunned as though she hadn't heard me correctly. What did you just say?" she asked slowly. "I said I won't marry him." My chest ached, but the words tasted like freedom. "You're right. You've always been right. I don't want to be with him. Not now, not ever." Her breath caught and her hand trembled in mine. "Clara, are you serious?" "Yes." My tears kept falling, but they were laced with something new, relief. I'll do whatever you say, Mom. I won't make you worry anymore. Her face softened, and for the first time in years, 2 lives worth of years, I saw her smile without reservation. Slowly she reached up and cupped my damp cheek, brushing away the tears with her thumb. "That's my girl," she murmured, her own eyes glistening now. "Silly girl. You're only 19. You think you won't find a good man out there? Once we move to the city with your father, you'll meet someone who's truly worthy of you. Someone who'll cherish you." I nodded desperately, clinging to her words. "Yes. You're right." Her arms came around me, pulling me against her chest. I buried my face in her shoulder, inhaling the comforting scent of soap and smoke and warmth that was uniquely hers. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt safe. "I'll protect you this time," I whispered so softly she couldn't hear. The morning drifted on. Mom rose with her usual energy, talking about slaughtering one of the hens before we moved to the city. I followed her out of bed, still shaken but unwilling to let her out of my sight. She bustled about the kitchen, her sleeves rolled up, her movements brisk and sure. I watched her, memorizing every detail. The way she pinched her lips while chopping vegetables, the way she scolded the chickens as she caught one, the way she hummed under her breath as she stoked the stove fire. In my last life I had taken these things for granted. Now every second felt like a gift. When breakfast was finally set out, she sat down across from me, studying me with a curious smile. "You really mean it, don't you? You won't marry that boy?" I met her gaze steadily. "I mean it." She exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing. "Good. Then I can finally sleep at night." I bit my lip to keep from crying again and forced a smile. "Don't worry, Mom. Everything will be different this time." I was still rinsing the chicken bones when a shadow darkened the doorway. The sound of polished shoes on the stone threshold made my stomach turn even before I looked up. And there he was. Nathaniel Cross. He was exactly as I remembered him in my last life. White shirt crisp and clean, tucked into slim black trousers, black leather shoes gleaming as though he had polished them thrice before coming. His hair was combed neatly to the side, not a strand out of place. To any outsider he looked every bit the gentle, educated young man. My father had adored him for that very image. A schoolteacher, quiet and well-mannered. To my father, who had only studied through elementary school before throwing himself into business, an educated son-in-law was the ultimate prize. And in my last life I too had fallen for that image. I used to beam with pride every time Nate walked into our courtyard. I used to run to him, my heart fluttering, eager to hear his gentle voice and feel his approving gaze. I had been so sure I was the luckiest woman alive to marry him. But not this time. This time I saw through the polished exterior. I knew what lurked beneath. The cold, calculating man who would poison my parents, steal my family's fortune, and cast me aside like trash once I had nothing left to offer. So when his eyes lit up at the sight of me, I didn't run to him. I didn't smile. I simply straightened, wiped my wet hands on my apron and asked coolly, "What brings you here, Nate?" The brightness in his expression faltered, confusion flickering in his eyes. That wasn't how I was supposed to greet him. I was supposed to squeal, to tug him inside, to cling to his arm. But I had given him none of that. He recovered quickly, slipping his usual gentle smile back on. "Clara, what do you mean? We agreed yesterday. We're going to the city today to register our marriage." I tilted my head, pretending to search my memory. "Did we?" His smile wavered again. "Of course we did." I tapped my chin thoughtfully. Must have slipped my mind. I've been busy helping Mother with breakfast. Are you sure it was today?" A muscle in his jaw twitched. His eyes sharpened just for a fraction of a second before he caught himself. "Clara, how could you forget something so important?" His voice had lost its warmth, frustration seeping through the cracks. "Do you even take me seriously?" I widened my eyes in mock innocence. "Oh no. Are you upset? If you're upset, does that mean you won't marry me anymore?" His face darkened instantly, his mask slipping further. "That's right," he snapped. "If I'm mad, I won't marry you." For a moment the courtyard went quiet, only the crackle of the stove fire breaking the silence. In my past life those words would have shattered me. I would have cried, begged, clung to him, promised to make it up to him. I would have fallen over myself to keep him happy. But this time I simply pressed my lips together and let a small, tremulous whimper slip from my throat. Then I turned and darted into the kitchen, clutching at my mother's sleeve. "Mom!" I cried, burying my face against her shoulder. "Nate's mad. He doesn't want to marry me anymore." Mom stiffened, startled. Her eyes darted from my tear-streaked face to Nate standing awkwardly at the doorway. "What's gotten into you today, Clara?" she asked suspiciously. Then her gaze hardened as it swung back to Nate. "If he won't marry you, then so be it. You're still young. I'll help you find someone better." Her tone was brisk, no nonsense. I peeked at Nate from the corner of my eye. His expression froze. Panic flickered in his gaze as he realized Mom was taking my side, not his. He rushed forward, his hands raised placatingly. "Auntie, please don't misunderstand. I was only joking. Claire is the one I love most. Everyone in the village knows it. The whole town knows we're supposed to register today. How could I not want to marry her?" Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "Didn't you see? Claire's not happy today. We'll wait a few more days. You should go home for now." Her words were firm, leaving no room for argument. Nate's jaw tightened, though he quickly lowered his head in an obedient gesture. "All right, Auntie. Please, talk to Clara. I'll come back this evening." He turned to leave, his back ramrods stiff. But just before he stepped through the gate, he glanced over his shoulder. His eyes met mine, and for the briefest of moments the mask slipped completely. What I saw wasn't the gentle, patient fiancé he showed the world. It was hatred. Pure, simmering hatred. The look was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by his usual polite smile as he bowed slightly to my mother. "I'll see myself out." Then he was gone. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, my mind whirling. In my last life I had never noticed it. The flashes of resentment behind his smile, the tightness in his voice when he didn't get his way. I had been too busy excusing everything, telling myself he was just stressed, just tired, just misunderstood. But now I saw it clearly. Nathaniel Cross wasn't the man I thought he was. He was a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. And this time I would not be his prey. I could still feel Nate's gaze burning in my mind long after he left that morning. That fleeting flicker of hatred behind his smile. It wasn't something I could unsee. In my past life I had explained those things away, chalking them up to stress, fatigue, or just my own imagination. But not anymore. This time I refused to blind myself. As I scrubbed the dishes, a memory surfaced. It was sharp, vivid, and cruel. 5 years from now, in my last life, I had stumbled across something I never should have seen. Nate and Valerie standing together outside the hospital. She had clung to him desperately, her eyes brimming with tears as she whispered that she thought she might be pregnant. He had comforted her, holding her as though she were the most precious person in the world. That scene had shattered me then. But even after witnessing it, I had let Nate explain it away, let him convince me that Valerie was just confused, that she was lying, that she was clinging to him because she had no one else. And I, fool that I was, had believed him. This time I clenched my jaw. Not again. If my memory was right, then today or very soon, I would catch them again. And I would not let Nate twist it. I wiped my hands on my apron, heart thudding. "Mom, I need to run an errand in town." Evelyn looked up from the vegetables she was chopping. "What errand?" I hesitated, then forced a small smile. "Just something I forgot yesterday. I'll be back soon." She gave me a suspicious glance but didn't press. "Don't dawdle." I nodded quickly and left. The hospital wasn't far. The morning sun was still weak and the dirt road was quiet, lined with fields of green. My sandals crunched softly against the earth as I walked, every step a drumbeat of anticipation. I reached the hospital gates and positioned myself behind a low wall, half hidden by an overgrown bush. My hands were clammy. Minutes dragged by. Then, just as my memory promised, I saw them. Valerie Hart came first. She was dressed simply in a pale yellow blouse and a long skirt, but she clung to Nate's arm as though she would drown without him. Her face was pale, anxious, her voice trembling. "Nate, I think I might be pregnant." My breath caught even though I had expected it. Hearing the words again still made bile rise in my throat. Nate's expression softened instantly. He leaned down, brushing his hand gently across her back. "Don't worry. If you're pregnant, then we'll have the baby." Valerie's lip quivered. But I'm still a virgin, Nate. If people in the village find out, they'll laugh me to death." My nails dug into the wall, fury coursing through me. Virgin. What a ridiculous lie. Yet the way she said it, so delicately, so tearfully, could almost fool someone. Nate's eyes darkened briefly, then his lips curved into that reassuring smile he was so good at faking. We're moving to the city soon. You can have the baby there. Who's going to know, sweetheart? My stomach churned. In my last life, that was exactly what had happened. Valerie had moved to the city with us, tucked away in a small apartment that Nate paid for using my family's money. I had never questioned the mysterious expenses, the unexplained absences. I had been too busy trying to please my husband to look deeper. I had been a fool. Valerie sniffled, resting her head on his shoulder. I'll listen to you, Nate. His arm tightened around her, and for a moment he looked genuinely pleased, as if he had just secured a treasure. The sight was like a blade twisting in my gut. I forced myself to watch as they went inside, then emerged again an hour later. Valerie's face was blotchy from crying, but her hands rested protectively over her stomach. The doctor's words echoed faintly from memory, a little over 2 months along. So it was true. Valerie Hart was pregnant. With Nate's child. I hurried home before they returned, my mind racing. When I stepped into the kitchen, Mom looked up sharply. Clara? You're back quick. I sank onto the bench, my hands trembling. Mom. I saw them. Nate and Valerie. At the hospital. Her knife froze mid-chop. They were together, I continued, my throat tight. Valerie told him she thinks she's pregnant. He told her they'd have the baby in the city. That no one would know. The knife clattered onto the cutting board. For a heartbeat, silence pressed thickly between us. Then Mom's face darkened, her jaw tightening. That bastard. She slammed her palm against the table, making the dishes rattle. I knew he wasn't faithful, but this... pregnant? He's been fooling around all this time. She grabbed the towel, already turning. I'm calling your father. He needs to come back and see this so-called son-in-law with his own eyes. I shot up, grabbing her arm. Mom, wait. She stopped, her chest heaving with fury. What is it? Clara, this can't wait. It has to, I cut in, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. Just because Valerie's pregnant doesn't mean Dad will believe it's Nate's. He adores Nate, you know that. He'll think you're slandering him. He'll think I'm slandering him. Mom's lips pressed into a thin, angry line. If we don't catch them red-handed, I said quietly, he won't believe us. And then Nate will twist it all until we look like the villains. Her anger faltered into hesitation. She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes searching. Then she exhaled slowly. You're right, she admitted reluctantly. Your father's good at everything except picking a son-in-law. A humorless laugh escaped me. Exactly. She placed her hand over mine. Then we'll make sure he sees the truth for himself. I nodded, determination settling in my chest like steel. We will. For a moment, silence stretched again, softer this time. Mom's grip on my hand tightened. Her voice softened, trembling faintly. Why, silly girl, she whispered, her eyes shimmering with both anger and worry. You deserve so much better than this. I swallowed hard, tears threatening again. I know, Mom. I know. It started with whispers. By the second morning, they had grown into loud, unashamed chatter that followed me wherever I went. Clara Dawson hasn't registered her marriage yet? Strange, isn't it? Maybe she's hiding something. Heard she's been sneaking around. Oh, I heard she's pregnant already. That's why she doesn't dare register. The words slithered around the village like snakes, hissing in every ear. Everywhere I turned, eyes followed me, heavy with judgment, pity, or gleeful malice. In my past life I had withered under that weight. I had lowered my head, swallowed the humiliation, and let them tear me apart piece by piece. But this time I had teeth. The breaking point came one sweltering afternoon. I was on my way back from fetching water at the well when a group of women blocked my path. Their arms were crossed, their smiles sharp, their voices dripping with false sympathy. Among them stood Valerie Hart's mother and sister-in-law. My heart hardened instantly. So, Valerie's mother said, her voice loud enough for half the street to hear. It's true then, Clara? You've got some secret man and now you're with child. That's why you won't marry Nate. The other women tittered, leaning in eagerly. My grip on the water pail tightened. Do you have any proof? I asked, my voice steady, clear enough to cut through their chatter. Valerie's mother raised her chin smugly. Proof? Everyone's talking about it, so it must be true. I smiled then, a smile sharp as glass. Oh. So if I start a rumor that your eldest son was fathered by that old bachelor from the east side of the village, does that make it true too? Or that Valerie was born of you and the man down by Zhuang Creek? Would that be true as well? The crowd gasped, a ripple of shock running through them. Her mother's face turned beet red. You filthy liar. I'll tear that mouth of yours apart. She lunged at me, but I stepped back smoothly, pushing my own mother gently aside as she tried to shield me. It's fine, Mom, I murmured, my eyes never leaving the angry woman. We're just joking around. Who's joking with you? Valerie's mother spat. But before she could continue, a new voice cut through the crowd. Well, well, Widow Lee cackled as she waddled over. Look how vivid all these rumors are. One minute it's Valerie having Nate's baby, the next it's Clara pregnant with some wild man's child. Who even knows what's true anymore? Ha! Laughter rippled uneasily. I seized the moment. I raised my chin and said clearly, the truth is simple enough. If anyone doubts me, let Dr. Lee check me. That stilled the air. Villagers exchanged wide-eyed glances. Before anyone could respond, a sharp voice rang out. I can prove it. Valerie herself stepped forward, dressed in a pale pink dress, her cheeks flushed as if she'd hurried over. She positioned herself dramatically in the center, eyes wide with fake innocence. Clara is seeing someone, she declared, her voice trembling with just the right amount of practiced outrage. A few days ago I went to the back hills. I saw her hugging a man. He was wearing a gray tank top. Tall, slim, young. I saw it with my own eyes. The crowd erupted instantly, everyone craning their necks, searching for the supposed man in question. My pulse pounded. In my last life I had panicked. I had denied, cried, begged them to believe me. And they hadn't. But not this time. This time I knew exactly how to turn this. Their eyes settled one by one on Adrian Wells. Adrian stood at the edge of the crowd, quiet as always, his posture a little awkward. He was an orphan raised by his grandmother until she died the year before. He worked hard, kept to himself, never caused trouble. He had always been in the background of the village, steady and unnoticed. He'll know. Adrian, someone whispered. It must have been him. The crowd's anticipation thickened, hungry for scandal. I felt every gaze burning into me. My hands trembled, but not with fear. With decision. I strode forward, closing the distance between me and Adrian. Before he could step back, I reached out and grabbed his hand firmly. Adrian Wells, I said clearly, my voice carrying over the crowd, let's get married. The world fell silent. Adrian blinked, stunned. His hand twitched in mine, but I held it fast, meeting his eyes with unflinching resolve. The silence stretched until it threatened to break me. Then finally his lips curved just slightly. All right, he said quietly. Let's get married. The crowd exploded into chaos. Gasps, shouts, mutters. Some disbelieving, some scandalized, some downright gleeful. And then came the roar of a familiar voice. Clara. Nate burst through the throng, his face twisted with fury. He shoved past villagers until he stood before me, glaring at my hand clasped with Adrian's. You promised to marry me, he shouted, spittle flying. And now, just because of a little misunderstanding, you throw yourself at another man? You're even pregnant with his child, aren't you? The crowd leaned in eagerly, the drama reaching its peak. I turned, my hands still in Adrian's, and without hesitation, I slapped Nate across the face. The sharp crack echoed in the square. Gasps rippled again. Pregnant. I spat, my voice ice cold. Other man. Nate, tell me, who's the other man here? You and Valerie sneaking around the hospital? Her clutching your arm, crying that she's pregnant? Do you deny it? Nate's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Don't twist things, he stammered, glancing around desperately. Valerie's just confused. She needs comfort. I was helping her. Helping her. My laugh was sharp enough to cut stone. Is that what you call promising to raise her baby in the city with my family's money? The villagers erupted again, this time not with scandalous glee but with disgusted murmurs. That's right, I continued mercilessly, my voice rising. You think I'm blind? You think I don't know? You've been poisoning my family with lies for years, Nate. But this time I'm not the fool you think I am. I tightened my grip on Adrian's hand and raised it high for all to see. I won't marry you. I'll marry Adrian instead. At least he's honest, hardworking, and clean. The crowd surged with noise, half shocked, half approving. Nate's chest heaved, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at me with raw fury. But he couldn't fight the tide of whispers turning against him, couldn't claw back the perfect image he'd cultivated for so long. And for the first time I saw him falter. I had struck the first blow. The square was buzzing, voices layering over each other like a swarm of bees. Clara's lost her mind, hasn't she? No, did you see the way Nate looked at Valerie? There's something there. But still, running off with Adrian Wells? An orphan. She's brave. I'd have never dared say it out loud. I stood tall, though my palms were damp. I could feel Adrian's steady warmth beside me, his hands still in mine, grounding me. Nate, on the other hand, was seething. His face flushed a dangerous shade of red, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. You think you can just humiliate me in front of everyone? He spat, his voice trembling with fury. Clara, you're making a fool of yourself. If you're really so clean, prove it. You're the one who's been sneaking around with other men. You're probably pregnant already, aren't you? The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Some looked at me with doubt, others with curiosity, all waiting for me to crumble. But instead I lifted my chin and raised my voice so everyone could hear. Fine. Let's prove it. I turned my head deliberately. Where's Dr. Lee? A ripple spread through the crowd, and after a moment an older man stepped forward. His beard was white, his back slightly bent, but his eyes were sharp and lively. Everyone in the village knew him. Dr. Lee the Miracle, our traditional healer. I'm here, he said, his voice calm. I thrust out my arm without hesitation. Take my pulse, Dr. Lee. Let's see if I'm pregnant. Nate's smirk faltered. He hadn't expected me to call his bluff so boldly. Dr. Lee pressed his fingers against my wrist, his brows knitting in concentration. The crowd fell silent, straining to hear. After a moment he straightened, shaking his head. She's not pregnant, he declared firmly. Gasps swept through the villagers, followed by a wave of mutters. You all heard that, right? I called out, my voice sharp as a blade. Dr. Lee just confirmed it. I'm not pregnant. So tell me, who started such a vicious rumor? Who tried to ruin my name? People shuffled, glancing at one another nervously. A few even turned accusing eyes toward Valerie, who stood a little behind Nate, wringing her hands. I didn't give them time to recover. I seized the moment, spinning on my heel. Dr. Lee, I said coldly, pointing straight at Valerie, check her. The color drained from Valerie's face. She stumbled back a step, clutching her belly protectively. Me. There's no need. Nate shot forward instantly, panic flashing across his features. Clara, that's enough. Stop dragging innocent people into this. He tried to block Dr. Lee's path, his hand half raised as though to push him back. But Dr. Lee was slyer than most gave him credit for. As Nate waved dramatically with his right hand, Dr. Lee simply shifted, sliding his left hand against Valerie's wrist in one smooth motion. His fingers pressed down firmly. The square went silent again. Dr. Lee's brows furrowed, then lifted in quiet certainty. Over 2 months, he said. The crowd erupted. What? Did he say pregnant? Valerie, 2 months along? Dr. Lee repeated himself, louder this time, his voice ringing over the chaos. She is pregnant. Over 2 months. The square exploded with gasps, shouts, and accusations. Valerie's lips trembled, her eyes wide with horror. She tried to jerk her hand away, but it was too late. The truth was out. Girl, Dr. Lee added gravely, your pregnancy is not stable. You must be careful or you risk miscarriage. I'll write you a prescription to strengthen your body. But Valerie wasn't listening. Her entire face was burning crimson, shame written in every line of her trembling body. She tore her hand free and bolted, shoving through the crowd, tears streaking down her cheeks. Quack, doctor, her mother screeched, trying desperately to salvage the situation. What nonsense are you spouting? My daughter, pregnant? Impossible. But the crowd was already turning. Didn't you see how she ran? Guilty. Over 2 months. That lines up exactly with when Nate started going to her house all the time. So all this time Clara wasn't the shameless one, it was Valerie. Faces that had once judged me now swiveled toward Nate and Valerie's family with contempt. Even Dr. Lee, his hands clasped behind his back, looked offended. "If you don't believe me, take her to the county hospital. They'll tell you the same thing." Valerie's mother faltered, her bravado collapsing. She tried to retreat, but whispers chased her like shadows. I stepped forward, seizing the silence that followed. My voice rang clear. "There you have it. The truth. Valerie Hart is pregnant, and it's Nate who's been keeping her company," whispering promises in her ear. Nate's face twisted, desperation leaking into his tone. "Clara, you can't just assume it's mine." "Oh please," I cut him off coldly. "Do you think we're all blind? Who else has she been hanging on to? Who else promised to raise her baby in the city with my family's money?" The villagers murmured in agreement. The tide had turned and no amount of smooth talking would undo it. I took a step closer, my eyes boring into Nate's. "You thought you could poison my family with lies, cheat behind my back and still have me marry you? You thought you could play us all for fools." His face contorted, but he couldn't find the words. I raised my chin proudly, tightening my grip on Adrian's hand. "I won't marry you, Nate. I'll marry Adrian Wells instead. At least he's honest, hardworking, and has never once tried to deceive me." The crowd erupted again, but this time the cheers outweighed the murmurs. Good for her. That's the way to handle it. Nate had it coming. Nate trembled, his fists clenching. His perfect image, the one he had spent years polishing, lay in ruins at his feet. Beside me, Adrian finally spoke. His voice was quiet but steady, carrying easily over the crowd. "From today onward, Clara is my fiancée. If anyone dares slander her again, they'll answer to me." The firmness in his tone startled even me. Normally so reserved, Adrian now stood tall, his shoulders squared, his eyes blazing with a quiet fire. For the first time I truly saw him. And for the first time Nate realized he had lost. The square slowly emptied after the storm of revelations, but the echo of whispers clung to the air like smoke. Some cast lingering glances at me, others muttered about Nate's hypocrisy, and a few even dared to praise my courage. I stood still, my hands still in Adrian's, my heart pounding. The crowd's noise dimmed in my ears until there was only the steady warmth of his palm anchoring me to the earth. In my past life I had walked this path alone. Humiliated, broken, clinging desperately to Nate's lies. But this time someone stood beside me. Adrian Wells. An orphan. Poor, ordinary, overlooked. But his presence was steady, his grip firm. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Clara, did you mean it?" I met his gaze. His dark eyes were calm, but beneath them flickered something fragile, almost disbelieving. "Yes," I said firmly. "I meant it." Silence stretched between us. He seemed to search my face as though waiting for me to laugh, to admit it was all a show. But I didn't. I couldn't. Finally, he nodded once, a small smile tugging at his lips. "All right then." The very next morning we went into the city. The bus ride was bumpy, the seats worn, the chatter of other passengers filling the air. I stared out the window, watching the fields roll by, while Adrian sat beside me in quiet stillness. He wore a freshly washed shirt, slightly faded but neat, and his hair had been combed back more carefully than usual. I glanced at him, my chest tightening unexpectedly. In my last life I had ridden this very bus with Nate, my hand entwined with his, my head buzzing with excitement at becoming his wife. That day had sealed my fate. But this time, sitting beside Adrian, I felt something different. Not the dizzying intoxication of infatuation, but a calm, steady warmth. A sense that my feet were on solid ground. When we arrived, the Civil Affairs office was already bustling with couples. Some were giddy, some nervous, others arguing quietly over paperwork. I held my breath as Adrian and I stepped forward, presenting our documents. The clerk barely looked at us, shuffling papers, stamping seals, and finally sliding 2 red booklets across the desk. I stared at them. Marriage certificates. My fingers trembled as I picked mine up. The words blurred for a moment through my tears. I was married. But not to Nate. Not to the man who poisoned my family, who destroyed me. This time I was married to someone who stood beside me when the world tried to shame me. I looked up at Adrian. He held his booklet awkwardly, as though it were something too delicate for his rough hands. When our eyes met, he gave me a small, tentative smile. "Congratulations, Clara," he said softly. Something in me cracked. I laughed, shaky but genuine. Congratulations, husband. His ears turned red. He ducked his head, but the corners of his mouth refused to flatten. We spent the rest of the day wandering the city streets. We bought simple rings from a small shop. Nothing extravagant, just silver bands, but to me they felt like treasure. I insisted on buying Adrian 2 new shirts and a pair of trousers. He protested, but I overruled him with a smile. That evening when we returned home, Mom was waiting at the gate. Her eyes widened as she saw the red booklets in my hand. Then tears welled instantly and she rushed forward, clutching my face in her hands. You really did it, she whispered, her voice trembling. You really didn't marry Nate. I nodded, choking on my own tears. I married Adrian. She turned then, her gaze landing on him. For a moment she studied him quietly. Adrian shifted, awkward under her scrutiny, his shoulders stiff. Then Mom broke into a smile. Good boy. She reached out and took his hands in hers. I've always liked you, Adrian. Honest, hardworking. Now you're my son-in-law. Don't you ever bully Clara, you hear? His throat bobbed. I won't. I'll treat her well. Mom's eyes softened and she patted his hands. That's all I ask. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. In my past life, Mom had never lived to see me choose differently. She had died disappointed, believing her daughter was blind. But now she was smiling. Truly smiling. A week later, my father returned from the south. Robert Dawson was a tall man, his voice naturally booming, his presence commanding. Years of running a business had carved confidence into his every movement. When he walked into the courtyard, I rushed to him like I had as a little girl. Dad. He laughed, scooping me into a brief embrace. Silly girl, you've gotten thinner. Your mother isn't feeding you enough. Mom rolled her eyes. As if you're here to help. His laughter faded when he spotted Adrian standing awkwardly behind me. And who's this? Mom stepped forward smoothly. Our son-in-law. His eyes widened. What? Mom handed him the red booklet. He opened it, scanned the names and blinked. Clara. Adrian Wells? Not Nate. I took a deep breath. Not Nate. Adrian. He frowned, confused. But Nate, he's educated, well-mannered. Mom cut him off sharply. And a snake. Don't start, Robert. Claire's better off without him. Dad looked between us, uncertainty flickering. Then his gaze fell on Adrian. He studied him, noting his clean clothes, his straight posture, the way he didn't flinch under the scrutiny. Finally, Dad nodded slowly. You're an orphan, right? Adrian stiffened. Yes, sir. And you've been working the field since you were a boy? Yes. Dad grunted. Then unexpectedly he clapped Adrian on the shoulder. Good. A man who knows how to work is worth more than a dozen smooth talkers. Take care of my daughter. If you do, you'll have my support. Relief surged through me, tears pricking my eyes. Adrian's shoulders relaxed and he bowed slightly. I will. Dad chuckled, satisfied. Then it's settled. From today, your family. Mom beamed and I felt warmth bloom in my chest. For the first time, both my parents stood beside me, united in support. But peace never lasts long. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stepped outside to fetch water. Across the road I saw him. Nate. He stood half-hidden behind a tree, his clothes rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. He wasn't smiling anymore. His gaze was fixed on me, burning with raw hatred. Our eyes met, and for a long moment the world stilled. In my past life, that look would have sent me trembling. I would have rushed to him, desperate to appease, terrified of losing him. But now, I lifted my chin. I didn't flinch. If anything, I let a small smile curl my lips. He had lost. And he knew it. The first days after Adrian and I registered were like breathing clean air after years of choking smoke. Mom hummed while cooking. Dad teased her when he wasn't inspecting the fields, and Adrian was simply there. Quiet, steady, dependable. But shadows don't vanish just because you light a lamp. Everywhere I went, I could feel Nate watching. At the market, by the well, even outside our gate, his presence lingered like a stain. Villagers whispered when they saw him loitering, his once gentle smile now a bitter curl. I knew he wouldn't give up so easily. I just didn't expect him to strike so soon. It happened 3 nights later. I had just drifted to sleep, the cicadas humming outside my window, when a hand clamped over my mouth. My eyes snapped open to the dim moonlight filtering through the window. And there he was, Nate's face twisted with something feral hovering above me. "Shoo," he hissed, his breath hot against my cheek. "Don't scream, Clara. You know I'm the only one for you." I thrashed, panic clawing up my throat. He pinned me down, his grip cruel on my wrists. "You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone? Run off with that orphan?" "No," he snarled. "If I take you tonight, you'll have no choice but to marry me. No one else will want you." My stomach churned with revulsion. How had I ever loved this man? "In your dreams," I spat, managing to twist just enough to slam my knee upward. He cursed, doubling over for a split second, but came back with a slap across my face that made stars explode behind my eyes. "You little..." Before he could finish, a voice cut through the night like thunder. "You bastard." The door burst open and Mom stormed in, wielding a thick wooden stick. Without hesitation, she swung it down on Nate's back with a sickening crack. He roared, stumbling off me. "Even if my daughter never marries," Mom shouted, eyes blazing, "she will never marry you." I scrambled off the bed, clutching the blanket around me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Nate recovered quickly, rage twisting his features. "You nasty old woman. You've been filling her head with lies about me since the start. Tonight I'll shut both of you up." He lunged, but Mom met him head-on, swinging the stick again. Blow after blow rained down, and though Nate tried to fight back, he wasn't used to physical labor. His soft hands and scholar's pride were no match for a woman hardened by years of work and love. Still, Mom couldn't keep him down alone. My fear solidified into fury. Grabbing the stick when she faltered, I swung with every ounce of strength in me. Once, twice, again and again until my arms burned. "You think you can take advantage of me?" I screamed. "Let's see if you can take this." Nate howled, stumbling back, arms raised to shield himself. His nose was bleeding, his lips split, his breaths ragged. "Clara," Mom cried. "Don't kill him, let him breathe." I froze, chest heaving, the stick trembling in my grip. For a heartbeat I thought he might be dead. But then a weak groan escaped him, followed by a pathetic curse. "Witches," he spat hoarsely. "You're both witches." Mom and I exchanged a glance, a strange smile tugging at both our lips. "If we really were witches," I said coldly, crouching beside him, "you'd already be dead." His eyes widened, fear flickering behind the hate. I leaned closer, my voice like ice. "Valerie's pregnant with your child, and yet you still tried to force yourself on me? You really think I'm that much of a fool?" He tried to deny it, but I cut him off, pulling the red booklet from the table and waving it in his face. "Open your eyes, Nate. I'm already married to Adrian. Wiggly. You've lost." He stared at the booklet as if it were a dagger. Then he laughed. A broken, bitter sound. "Fake. It has to be fake." Mom's patience snapped. "Clara, help me drag him out." Together we hauled him to the door, ignoring his curses and weak struggles, and shoved him outside. Mom slammed the door behind him, bolting it tight. I pressed my ear to the wood, listening. Sure enough, a moment later, I heard a soft voice outside. "Valerie. What happened? You didn't..." "You idiot." Nate roared. "Who told you to tell her you're pregnant with my baby?" Valerie whimpered, trying to calm him, but he shoved her away, his fury echoing into the night. The next morning word had already spread. Villagers muttered about how Nate had tried to break into our house, how he'd been beaten back by me and Mom. Some laughed openly. Others shook their heads. For once, the whispers weren't about my shame. They were about his. By evening, Dad returned from the fields, his clothes still dusty, his face set in a thunderous scowl. Mom wasted no time telling him everything. "What?" His roar rattled the windows. "That bastard tried to lay hands on my daughter?" Before I could speak, Dad stormed out into the yard. And as if fate wanted just as swift, Nate appeared at the gate, his face still bruised but his arrogance intact. "Uncle Robert," he began, forcing a smile. "I came to apologize, to explain." He didn't finish. Dad's fist connected with his jaw so hard the sound cracked through the yard. Nate staggered back, eyes wide with shock. "You piece of trash." Dad bellowed. "I haven't even come looking for you yet, and you dare step foot on my land?" He kicked Nate square in the stomach, sending him sprawling. Before Nate could scramble up, Dad stomped on his hand, grinding it into the dirt. "If you ever touch Clara again, Dad growled, his voice low and deadly. I will kill you. Do you hear me? Kill you. Nate's face twisted in pain and fear, his pride shattered. He spat blood, glaring up at me with hatred burning in his eyes. You just wait, he hissed. You'll regret this. But his words rang hollow. Because for the first time I wasn't the one trembling. He was. That night, as Adrian stood guard outside my door, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. In my last life, Nate had destroyed me. In this life I had destroyed him. And for the first time I felt the sweet, fierce taste of victory. The seasons shifted quickly after Nate's final downfall. Summer melted into autumn, the air crisp with the scent of harvested grain. For the first time in years I could walk through the village without keeping my head down, without flinching at whispered gossip. Now the whispers were different. Clara really was clever to see through Nathaniel. And Adrian, who would have thought? That orphan boy has such a backbone. Better than that smooth-tongued liar. Look at him now, skulking like a stray dog. Their words weren't cruel anymore, at least not toward me. They were cruel toward him. And that was enough. At home life was simple but sweet. Mom hummed as she spun thread in the evenings. Dad's booming laughter carried across the yard as he teased Adrian about his farming skills. Me. I cooked, cleaned, stitched and planned. Ordinary tasks, but each one tasted different now, flavored with peace instead of bitterness. Adrian worked hard in the fields, but he always came home early enough to help me carry water or shell beans. When I scolded him for muddy boots, he only smiled, unbothered. When my hands ached from sewing, he quietly took the needle and tried to stitch a crooked line until I laughed. It wasn't passion that burned hot and devoured. It was warmth that seeped into my bones, steady and enduring. One evening, as we sat together under the lantern light, Adrian cleared his throat. Clara, he said awkwardly, do you regret it? Regret what? Choosing me. When everyone expected you to marry Nate. I looked at him, at the man who had stood by me when no one else dared. The man who had never raised his voice, never raised his hand, never made me feel small. I smiled softly. Adrian, you were the best decision I ever made. His ears turned red and he ducked his head, but I caught the faintest smile curving his lips. Meanwhile, Nate's life unraveled thread by thread. Valerie's pregnancy became the talk of the village. At first he tried to keep up appearances, escorting her to the clinic, pretending to be a devoted partner. But soon the mask cracked. He grew impatient with her, snapping when she complained of pain, rolling his eyes at her tears. The day she went into premature labor, he wasn't even by her side. He was in the tavern drinking. When word spread that the child wasn't healthy, villagers shook their heads. Serves them right, someone muttered. Bad roots make bad fruit. Valerie wept, clutching the frail infant, but Nate only spat. Don't think I'll waste my life on this mistake. He left her in her parents' house, the crying baby in her arms, her face pale with despair. From then on, whenever people spoke of Nate, it was with contempt. Ungrateful. Coward. Not even half the man Adrian is. Finally, one gray morning, Nate packed his meager belongings and left the village. No one stopped him. No one wished him well. He vanished down the road like smoke on the wind, muttering curses under his breath. I watched from the gate, Adrian's hand in mine. Do you think he'll come back? Adrian asked quietly. I shook my head. Not as the man he once pretended to be. That Nate is dead. And in my heart I knew, even if he returned, he no longer had the power to harm me. Years passed. Winter came and went, replaced by the thaw of spring, then the lush green of summer. Our home grew busier, louder, brighter. The first time I held my newborn daughter in my arms, I cried so hard the midwife scolded me. Adrian sat beside me, his large hands trembling as he touched the baby's tiny fingers. She's so small, he whispered. So were you once, I teased through my tears. And look at you now. He laughed, the sound shaky, and pressed a kiss to my forehead. Thank you, Clara. For giving me a family. We named her Lily. 2 years later her brother arrived, sturdy, loud and quick to smile. And with every child, our home filled with more noise, more laughter, more warmth. Mom became the happiest grandmother alive, spoiling them shamelessly. Dad pretended to grumble about noisy brats, but he built them wooden toys when no one was looking. Sometimes when I stood in the doorway watching my parents chase Lily through the courtyard, or Adrian bouncing our son on his shoulders, I felt tears prick my eyes. Because this was the life I should have had all along. One summer evening after the children had fallen asleep, I sat in the courtyard with Adrian. The fireflies danced lazily in the dusk, and the stars blinked awake one by one. I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" I asked softly. He hesitated. "Sometimes. If you had married Nate instead. I think I'd still be working the fields, watching from afar, never daring to dream." I turned to look at him, his profile strong and calm in the fading light. "And I'd be dead," I said quietly. "He killed me once, Adrian. He would have killed me again." His arm tightened around me. For a moment silence stretched, heavy with the weight of what we both knew. Then I smiled. "But I didn't marry him. I married you. And this time I won." Adrian exhaled slowly, his lips curving into the smallest, most genuine smile. "We won." We sat there side by side as the stars spread across the sky. Years later, when Lily and her brother were grown, when Mom and Dad's hair had turned silver, when Adrian and I had built a small but thriving farm of our own, I often thought back to the turning point of it all. The moment I woke up in my bed, reborn. I could have repeated my mistakes. I could have clung to Nate, ignored the truth, walked the same path to ruin. But I hadn't. This time I had chosen differently. I had chosen courage. I had chosen family. I had chosen love that was steady, not poisoned. And because of that, everything had changed. I watched Lily laugh as she chased fireflies in the yard, her little brother trailing behind her. Adrian stood at the doorway, his hair flecked with gray, his smile the same as the first day I saw him in this new life. Quiet, warm, dependable. My heart swelled with gratitude. I had been given a second chance. And I had not wasted it. This was my new life. And finally it was happy. The end.